Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Today in our studio, we have two guests. We have Andres Quijano. I don't know if I said that right. I'll get you to correct me, Andres. And he is the sales manager at Envirosuite. And we have Chaim Kolominskas. He is the product manager of mining and industrial at Envirosuite. Before we get started, Andres, can you correct me? I think I butchered your last name, and I might have butchered yours as well.
No, it was, you did great. You did great. Really,
No, that was in the
perfect.
top 1% of
Exactly.
pronunciation
Yeah.
of my name, absolutely.
Okay, well, let's try to be honest in the interview, but okay. No, very good to have you. It's your first time on the show. Actually, maybe just we're gonna get into tons about Envirosuite. But I want to just, what is your role? Hi, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. I'm the product manager for the mining and industrial sectors at Envirosuite. Job of a product manager is to chart the long-term direction of the product. Where are we going? What do we do next? What problems do we solve? And what problems should we solve? And yeah, that's my focus. I've been with the business for a long time, so done a bunch of different things, but now moving my focus really into driving product direction.
So, are you dealing directly with clients in that role, or your team is talking to clients and you're getting that feedback? Like when I'm talking about
Yeah,
new
yes to
development.
both. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So our best innovations really come from understanding what customers need to do, what they want to do, and we spend as much time as we can listening to customers around that.
And Andres, what's your day to day with the company?
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Jared. Look, it's been very interesting working with Envirosuite. I've been with the company for about 7 years now, in the US. But a lot of people wonder about my accent at times. So I was born and raised in Colombia, and then I lived in Australia for 13 years. And I was doing a lot of work in mining over there operationally. Interesting enough, that's where I came across Envirosuite first. And I was working with all of the mining operations. They're implementing environmental solutions. Then work with South American companies, mining as well, based. And then took the role on the sales just because I really like to bring the design of solutions to new clients. So been doing that for the last 6 7 years now here with the business, and based at the moment out of the Sacramento office in California.
Mm.
And yeah, just really excited to be able to be here and then share some more about what we do.
Sorry, were you in Colombia? Were you in the mining space as well?
Yes, well, before I left Colombia, I went to college in university in Australia,
Oh,
and
okay.
then I moved back, and then I've been in the business of mining between Peru, Chile, and Colombia predominantly, and a little bit in Brazil as well.
So you have a pretty rounded out Australia, the U.S., Latin America. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I think it helps me understand a little bit of um, there is different drivers in mining
Mm-hmm.
that are locally very specific to different countries. Definitely South America, the political space plays a key role. But then you get into places like in Australia, where I had the opportunity to work in Western Australia, Port Hedland areas, and there are very different drivers. There are very different ways of operating. But to be able to actually see software and technology bringing those problems to a common ground to be able to address them in a way, it's certainly something that I've been very excited about.
I'm gonna you said you've done work in Peru, right?
Yes.
I was, because someone and I'm drawing a blank on who it was. It was on the show. They said that they found the difference. They came in from Australia, and they said they found the difference when they went. I think they were at Peruman.
Permanent, yeah.
And they went and they said that people were much more willing to tell them the problem they had in Peru, whereas in like
Right.
Canada, it was difficult to figure out. Like people weren't forthcoming. Like, this is the issue we're having. Is there any truth to that? So I've heard it once. So
I actually think that one of the things that you'll find throughout South America in general is that they are so much driven by that social license to operate that I think the problems they have are so socially exposed that they're
right,
not really giving you anything that is kind of unknown to the public.
right.
So if anything, I feel that when they share it is because they already know that there's something they need to address,
So they're
and,
just
and that's happened.
might as well cut to it and
Yeah,
get dealt with.
yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of that. So, but I like to think that in other places like North America and even in Australia, I felt that the biggest difference was you had larger teams in South America trying to deal with the problem, so everybody's trying to find a solution. My experience specifically in Australia was that you have individuals that were trying to champion ideas. So it's been a very interesting thing where in Australia I saw very direct initiatives driven by an individual, where over in South America I see more of these 5, 6, 7 people trying to achieve that.
That's interesting.
Let's talk about our heavy industry tour brought to you by Savannah Equipment, supplying mining equipment worldwide, and Geograph, solving customer challenges through innovation and design, higher performing parts, engineered solutions, on-time spare parts supply, and high-quality repairs. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. Falkirk Environmental Consultants transform ideas into sustainable realities. Founded in 2019 by a visionary team including Jen Turner, Max Brownhill, Mike McPhee, and Indigenous Engagement Specialist Christy Smith. The team champions projects that thrive and respect communities and ecosystems. Falkirk specializes in project planning, Indigenous rights, community well-being, and water stewardship. The team at Falkirk are more than consultants. They are natural resource stewards that support a sustainable future. Falkirk, getting it right the first time. You can contact them info@falkirk.ca to learn more. L&H Industrial can custom engineer and build from the ground up any heavy equipment assembly or machine that you need for your operation. Their worldwide 24/7 field services network is on the job whenever you need heavy equipment troubleshooting, repairs, rebuilds, relocations, or replacements. And thanks to their specialized design and engineering and state-of-the-art manufacturing and repair services, they are a go-to international supplier for improved components and custom assemblies for heavy industrial machinery. Visit lnh.net to learn more. Did you know cementitious binders can be responsible for up to 70% of the total GHG footprint of mine backfilling processes? Now you can replace up to 50% of the binder in your mine backfill operations with Graybond, Graymond's new low-carbon cementitious binder. This lime-based alternative binder maintains a 40 to 70% lower GHG footprint compared to typical cement and can adapt to varying mine conditions without compromising performance. Learn more about Graybond at graybond.com.
What's your background in the space? You said you've been with
Envirosuite, 15 years
Okay.
around. And my background is, well, they called it environmental engineering when I studied, and which was back in those days. It was pretty much chemical engineering with a few token environmental subjects thrown in. but it was
That's a great description.
but it was a really valuable education in that it helps you understand the way that mass and energy moves through a system, which turned out to be really valuable in trying to help manage air quality issues in particular.
Yeah.
So my background is as an air quality specialist, a little bit of noise as a consultant, basically, back in the day, but working a lot with mining and industrial customers in trying to help them describe at least their problems.
Right.
So, and my history has kind of evolved with the history of the business. We were actually a specialist environmental consultancy from the very, very beginning in the 90s.
Oh.
And transitioned slowly into a technology business because we were using technology as a solution to help solve some of our customers' air quality problems.
Right.
As technology changed and improved, you could start to use databases and start to use computing power as it was to run better models and that sort of thing. So our business changed in a way that we started to use technology as part of the consulting service. But then as technology improved even further, it became more and more possible to have technology as a standalone solution. And our business changed as well. That became bigger part of our business. And eventually we sold off the consulting arm to focus exclusively on technology. I can't remember the original question, but
your background. No, it's exactly what I was asking.
But I was thinking about what Andres was saying just there around sort of matching the technology or the solution that we have to the problems that the customers have, and customers are they're all on different journeys in terms of how much they're willing to tell you and how much they're willing to share with a supplier, but also how much they're willing to share in general.
Right.
And they've all, once they've seen the value of that, then in a way there's no holding back in terms of how they could use technology creatively to solve those problems.
I have I hope you can answer this question because I'm very curious about it. Is when the company transitioned from consulting to more of the tech side, do you look back now on some of your consulting? I'm not asking you to call
Yeah.
yourself out on any projects, but I'm saying, do you look and go, man, if we have had that,
Yeah.
like how different is
Well-
the sort of the final, I guess the final decision making process? How
Yeah.
much can it actually differ?
Yeah, well, I think the big change, and that's what was at the tip of my tongue before, was that when you're a consultant, you're really good at describing the problem at the end of the day. You end up using the tools that you have to say, yep, you do have a problem.
Yep. Yep.
And when you're moving into technology, you actually have a solution in the end. You can actually help solve that problem. And that's such a eye-opening moment when
Yeah.
you move into the technology space, that you actually can go to a mine and help them improve the way that they manage air quality. Whereas before, we could really confirm that they had a problem,
Right.
and the solution was maybe to do another study to confirm it again.
Right.
Or to actually, most of consulting is really around helping mines get approvals for expansions or new works and
Right.
so on. So, being able to show that they could manage their operations well enough with their proposed plan of operation. But if they have an operation on the ground, a problem on the ground right now, you're kind of stuck as a consultant.
Right.
But with the creative, creative application of technology, you can do all sorts of things.
So today, if you were to describe Envirosuite, what would you, and maybe both of you, whoever wants to sort of take this one, what would you describe the company as of 2024?
We're an environmental technology company, 100%. We focus on helping customers to improve the way that they manage environmental issues, but we do that through the use of technology.
Yeah, I'd like to just basically add that for us, it's all about bridging that gap between environmental planning and operational activity. There's an abundance of data that exists today, and one of the key things for us is being, what are you really doing with all that data? To the point that Chaim was saying before, I actually come from manufacturing of instrumentation on the air quality space, and I worked for manufacturers in the past of making air quality instrumentation equipment, and everybody that is measuring it, whether it's regulatory or indicative or whatever you're trying to do, ultimately you're measuring it because you want to act on that data, you want to do something with it, and I think that's where Envirosuite sits today, of driving the technology so that people can actually do something with the data that they are collecting, because they can understand it better of what's the best action to be taken. A problem without the data is going to be really hard to understand, but even a data without understanding the source of your issues is where it is. So if you ask me where Envirosuite is today, I think we are an environmental technology company that is looking to bridge that gap between environmental planning and operational activity, with the aim of bringing regulators, society, and operations together so that we can kind of keep evolving.
So you're not just, I mean, obviously we're going to focus on the mining side, but you're not just in mining though, right?
No, mining, industrial, wastewater.
Yeah.
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 But
I thought
mining's a large part of it.
Yeah, mine is a very large part of it for us, but we work significantly in North America with wastewater treatment plants and with solid waste as well. And those are very key focus sectors for us in the industrial side that we're looking in here. But we're also the largest noise monitoring management system for all of the aviation industry in the
Yeah, I
South
saw that
American
on your
region.
website too. So you're covering a lot of you're covering now. Is the wastewater, does that is there some transfer over to the mining space in there, or is that more?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I mean, waste and wastewater depends on the product that we'll spend a lot of time talking about today. Waste and wastewater is focused on odor management in particular,
Right.
but we also do the management of data around water and wastewater issues at mine sites as well. So if there's information you can collect and analyze in an interesting way, then the products that that we have a use for that purpose.
What is the main focus in the mining space?
It's air quality and noise.
Noise.
So helping mines manage dust in particular, but dust and metals and noise, manage those issues better.
That's where we start typically, air quality, noise, and vibration. And I think that's because open pit mines deal with things like blasting. So understanding noise and vibration data space becomes important. So when you have communities nearby, understanding that far field is it's important. In the air quality space, we add value through forecast and air dispersion modeling as well. But what I find happening quite significantly on some of the projects we'll probably cover some as well today is that people start with, oh, I want to do the air quality system. And I have clients down in South America that started with 6 air monitoring stations, understanding what the sources are. And we're at over 200 monitoring locations now because they go, oh, well, I can start collecting water. I can start collecting all these other sets of information. And we're also very quickly becoming that centralized data hub where all things environmental for a mine operation can actually
Right.
be centralized.
Yeah.
And but that opens up a very significant topic as you're evolving through technology. And I just was actually in Brazil last week, giving a conference to Anglo America and Vale. And one of the things that we were talking about is the digitalization of mining and the whole concept of mining 4.0 and everything that's been evolved through that. And for me, what's been important and interesting on that is that there's so many data silos in mine operations that create actually inefficiencies. So being able to put a digital strategy that involves centralizing data, whether that's through Envirosuite or through your own centralized data lakes services, is critical to be able to also have the interconnectivity of multiple systems.
I will.
Because we're not the one for everything. But
Yeah, that's something I actually I get confused about being on the show because we have so much. Even the hardware companies now have a technology arm. So I'm always now on the show trying to ask, like, okay, how does this all integrate? Because I'm like, if I'm a mine manager, I mean, if I do 100 of these episodes, 50 of them are technologies. All of them are important. As I go through them, I see that, like, and most of them are operating in like some of these companies you've worked with. So there's so many of these companies in with these operators. How does it all integrate together? I
Yeah.
actually have a tough time
Yeah,
kind
we
of
had.
keeping up.
I mean, well, it depends on who you talk to, I guess. But we had to build a lot of capability in our business around managing data from lots of different places.
Right.
So we just had to be flexible. You couldn't say, "Oh, we have an API, just connect to it." It had to be. We have to have lots of different options for people to get data into our system, and that flexibility then has, that's opened up opportunities itself because people go, "Oh, you can handle all sorts of data in different forms," and
That's ongoing, I would assume,
yeah,
right? You're always developing that.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, absolutely. And I think there are one thing that you're actually going to see happening more and more, and at least the companies that I work with, I like to explain to them that a lot of people get focused on locked in one supplier of hardware. So let's say you're using company X for your water monitoring. And yes, they do have a software application that can actually manage that for sure.
Yeah.
But one of the things that is important is that you're going to lock in your hardware to your software. And if for whatever reason you start to look at different life cycles, the life cycle of a sensor is very different to the life cycle of software. So it's actually in the benefit of a mining operations to decouple that centralized data services with the data collection system, because you may decide tomorrow to change the sensors you're using. So you want a centralized place that is able to connect to a different sensor in the future. Otherwise, you start to create that locking mechanism of, okay, I can only work with that supplier now into the future, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
So, and then on the opposite side of it, once you collect it, is okay, what do you want to do with the data? There's real-time observation, alerts, alarms, and reportability. Well, you want that to be able to connect to your GIS system. You may have other systems that actually will benefit from these data sets. So I think we're seeing on the digital strategy mining specific that data collection and sensor is one thing, software manufacturing is another thing, and then the outputs start to become kind of something else as well. So I like to think, Jared, that in the future you'll probably see 3 key verticals that need to be actually addressed differently for every mine operation.
Mm.
And likewise, you could replace the software part in the middle. Like you could have Envirosuite today and tomorrow decide to go somewhere else. You don't want to have to replace all your hardware infrastructure
Right.
just because you replace the software.
And that was my next question because I want to get into some of these sort of real world examples here, but I wanted to get an understanding of just the setup. Are you doing sensors and software, or is the software connected to sensors when you're talking about, like noise reduction and dust and, are you coming in with any hardware onto those spaces?
Yes, we do have our own hardware for noise. We also work in partnership for air quality sensors, but it's not an exclusive arrangement. So, I mean, we are a solution provider, and the software is really central to our solution. So we're really looking for whatever fits best in a particular case. But if needed, we do provide air quality and noise and vibration sensors as well.
And then on the other one, I was wondering is when I was looking at your like on your website, it looks like almost like there's actual images that you're showing where are those coming from? Like is that like are those like satellite imagery? What is
Oh, so it's a lot of our interface and our software is a map-based view, really, of different insights that a customer can get from the data that's being collected. So, what you were talking about before in terms of hardware or sensor providers having their own platforms and so on, the big limitation of that is it's usually limited to the display and reporting of information. So what Envirosuite does, which is different to anybody else really, is to go very, very deep in terms of the analysis of the data that comes from those sensors and comes from different types of sources. So whether that's weather, whether that's a dust sensor, noise sensor, looking at that as a whole and then going very, very deep in terms of what can you get from it. So the types of problems that you can solve is not just what is the sensor reading at the moment, or is that a high or low value, but where did that issue originate from? So using some reverse trajectory modeling that's available on demand, you can understand the source of that problem. If you have an alert at your monitor or you get an SMS or an email or something, you can not only know that you have an issue, but actually understand where in the mine that issue has come from. And now, importantly, you can also link that to your response mechanisms. So actually have pre-configured responses ready to go. Okay, this means that I need to water the haul roads now, or this means that I should start watering my stockpiles, or this forecast for tomorrow means that I need to apply a higher level control that I'm used to, just to be able to avoid that issue. So that's really where Envirosuite comes into its own as this platform for real insights into how to manage these issues better.
So are you seeing like an example with the dust? Would you see an example where, let's say they go before they are monitoring it, they just go, okay, we water the roads, every 24 hours, every 48 hours, which is a big expense doing that.
Yeah, there could be a management plan that just says we water at this regular interval no matter what, or we apply dust suppression or whatever it is at that regular frequency. If it's a bit more sophisticated, it might be the winds are high. So we'll apply some higher level of control, or I mean we have been to places where they're literally looking out the window and saying, oh, that could be blowing towards the community. We need to apply some control here. So that can be as far as you can get with the tools that you have. And when you're limited to just recording of information, you can look back in time and say that's why I had a problem. Oh, the winds were high, but you can't go much further than that. So with forecasting and with high resolution analysis of the data that you're getting, you can go a lot further.
Yeah, I like to say that some of the early projects we started with, we never provided a sensor. The client already had all the data, but they needed to understand, okay, when I read high, what am I supposed to be doing basically about this?
Yeah.
And some of our early projects in Western Australia, like Port Hedland, was just basically just sensor that the client already had. So I do have clients that come to me and go like, well, I already have all these sensors, so it's great. Like we can ingest the data, still
Yeah.
provide the insights. But to the point that Chaim was going into is the what do I do then with this is happening, and how can I understand it? So the reverse trajectory modeling allows you to understand what is dust probably being generated, what is it actually coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and what can I do about it? You were talking about controls of watering and affecting your watering plants. So you have a watering plant of this is how much my water trucks are going to be running through, and this is the activity we're going to be doing for it. Um, some of the operations we work up in the BC area, the challenges are going to be very different in South America, dealing in tropical areas. Like
Mm.
you cannot put water when you're driving a whole track in icing conditions, for example. So I was talking to some of them 2 weeks ago, more specifically with the group at Tech in the EVO El Valle area, and they actually use snow to control dust. So interesting enough, that's obviously something that's very particular to them. But even then, if you look at it from a high level, and in mining, some people refer to the term of TARP, which is a trigger action response plan. You want to be able to have a dynamic trigger action response plan that
Mm-hmm.
is saying, under these conditions, we operate this way.
Right.
And if the conditions start to change, this is now what we have to do. And I have a clear example of something like that happening. People did not have Envirosuite, and the environmental superintendent, this is one of the mines, goes to the chief operating officer. You have to stop operations. It's too dusty outside. And the CEO comes and says, "Well, what does too dusty means? Just because you're looking out the window and you see too much dust, that doesn't really mean anything. And I'm not going to stop operations because of that." So, but once you have a system, then you
Mm.
bridge that gap.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the magic really happens, is when operations, because everybody wants to operate responsibly. I think every one of the mining operations we work with, they strive towards operating responsibly, but they need to be able to make good informed decisions. And I think that's breaching that gap is where it's important.
Well, I was watching one of your videos, and that's another one that stood out to me was that staying within compliance.
Mhm.
That you can actually, with your platform, you can go in and look at that and go, oh, I'm out of compliance here, or I'm within compliance. This is the compliance line. That's what I took it at when I was watching the video.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah. Not only you can do that, you can also forecast whether you'll be in compliance tomorrow. So you can
Right. Yeah.
using a high resolution weather forecast coupled with air quality modeling, you can understand: am I going to be in compliance at my regulatory monitor
Mm.
tomorrow, and if not, at what periods, and what's leading to those, what conditions are leading to that issue, and what should I do then to avoid that issue. So that's where you can get to now with cloud-based scalable technology that allows you to have that information at your fingertips.
I looked at, looking at, I mean, you've got, Glencore and BHP and you just mentioned tech. You've got the big boys. And what is it? I know this is a big question, but what is it that Envirosuite is doing that's essentially getting that trust from those companies? Like it's not the mining industry is not this easy thing to just walk into. So you have to really have a good value add. What do you think is that main thing that's on actually getting them on board?
I think early on, our customers trusted us to give them good advice. We had this background in specialist air quality management, noise management, and we were bringing something that they hadn't seen before,
Mm.
and they were really looking for a way to do things differently. So a mine might be wanting to improve air quality management because they want to, because they want to have a better relationship with the community, or they may be because they have to, because regulations have become more stringent over time and they're getting closer and closer to that issue of whether they're compliant or not.
Mm.
And that if they're not compliant, they can cause all sorts of disruptive or all sorts of problems for the mine. Now, when they're at that point, they need to manage issues in a different way. So early on, we were offering something that was different. a way of actually responding to real-time
Mm.
conditions, as opposed to just kind of evaluating why things happened and making sort of broader decisions around how they should manage. But being able to manage in real time really gets you a bigger buffer in terms of your compliance issues, because you can operate closer to the compliance limits by understanding the impacts of weather, for example. You can take action to avoid an issue happening, and you can drive this improvement through proactive management, I guess, is the concept. Air quality in particular is really weather dependent. So you can be doing the same thing today that you were yesterday, but your impacts could be orders of magnitude worse for the environment or for community health, just because the weather has changed. So if you have a really good understanding of weather at your site, in your local community, you can manage that issue much, much better.
Yeah, and I think that the key aspect of why we've been trusted is because they have seen value through the utilization of technology. But I also think there's been a bit of, for the last years, a mind shift of there is pressure for what used to be called corporate and social responsibility. Now is environmental and social governance comes and plays a role. So it's trying to understand how do we actually then translate that into real, tangible activity.
Mm.
And I think when a mining operation and some of the clients we have, like Glencore and Vale, is a very key client of us in the noise space. Some of the work we've been doing with them is because they have a situation where they need to be able to demonstrate that social license to the community, that they are operating responsibly, they are driving what's best practices. And one of the mining directors that I worked with, he said to me, Andres, I want to be at the leading edge, because what is actually the leading edge today is going to be a requirement in a few years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I'm actually kind of heading with what's leading today, I'm just ahead of it.
Yeah.
So I think mine operations are starting to be a lot more open to the utilization of technology and being able to have a trusted partner to work with, which brings into play that we have experience from different operations is been a key role. One of the groups that I work with says to me, they are so focused on the day to day of the mine that what they enjoyed when I go and visit, and as I said, I was in Brazil last week, is that I bring a perspective of how other people are operating. And
Right.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's very difficult, because if there is one thing mines have is challenges to be addressed on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with what's happening right now, and sometimes it's harder to get that wider view.
Mm.
So I think that they've trusted us because they have seen that we not only just working with them, and we work in partnership with them to deliver their issues that be very, very specific, but we also bring a wider perspective of what everybody else is doing.
What is the biggest roadblock? And I'll let both of you answer this question. We'll start with you, Andres. What is, when you're talking, what is sort of some of these pressing questions they have when they're actually deciding if it is the right fit for them?
Yeah, that's a great question, because interestingly enough, we talk to environmental teams who understand trigger action response plans, understand air dispersion modeling, or their environmental challenges they're trying to address. Um, but one key part of this whole process, which I encouraged everybody to actually bring me earlier when we have because of the roadblock, is our information and technology systems services. So the IT group in the mind, they are still somehow hesitant about a cloud-based solution and sharing data into the cloud. So I think that that's definitely one of those roadblocks I see happening that is important to address early. We at Envirosuite are very conscious about cybersecurity and all the that comes with it. But I think one of the interesting roadblocks for us is being that whole concept of IT has an important role to play in this. Well, in the past, the environmental team was talking with a consultant and they'll develop a plan, but IT didn't quite play a role onto it. Now
Right.
IT comes and plays a role, And I think when we have that collaboration, it works really well. But it can definitely be one of the roadblocks. Was the first one that came to mind when you were asking.
Yeah.
Not sure, Chaim, what you think on that. Or...
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'd say the big one of the big ones is the silos in operation, the silos between operational and environmental teams in mining businesses. There's
Right.
the environmental teams are kind of given this responsibility to, okay, keep us in compliance, let us operate, but they rarely have the budget to make things happen quickly. So, and the operational teams are quite skeptical of any sort of solution that an environmental team might bring in. So we really try and get to both parts of the organization.
It's so important when you're on when we've talked about this in the mining, but even in our, we've got lights and cameras and switch gear, and if someone comes in and wants to do it different, you kind of have to go with everybody has to be on board, because if there's a light shining in my eye in the wrong way, it's bothering me, it's hard to focus.
Yeah.
Right. So and in a scaled up mine, I mean, that's a tiny little example where, a few people in a scaled up mine. Yeah. One silo says, hey, this is the new initiative, and it's not onboarded right. Most people's first reaction, if they're not part of that decision-making process, is no.
Yeah.
Like
exactly right.
in sales, you're taught to not use the word change. You're not supposed to use the word. It's like,
change is hard. And our business took off when we first understood how to translate complex environmental information for operational teams.
Right.
So
you actually noticed a shift when you learned to do that.
Yeah, and when we first got that idea, if we present the data in this way, the operational team will get it and be able to use it without having to go back. So that providing this space where operational environmental teams could work together, I think was a kind of a key moment for us when if we redesign the product in this way with these types of analysis in a form that can be consumed by everybody, then our business really took off.
I have a client, one of the groups with tech. We're constantly getting feedback also from clients, and obviously the application is centralized, so every client is actually getting the same for everybody, obviously. And it's very interesting on what you're saying there, because he was telling me, Andres, operations, they only want to know what's happening and what do I need to do. They don't want to analyze data. They don't want to see, where's the wind going? What's happening? No, that's red. Red means I need to do this.
Right.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
And
I get that. I understand. Like they're trying to operate the mine.
They have like 20 screens in front of them.
Yeah.
So we're just one part of it. There's other stuff that's going on in the mine. So from an environmental team to have a voice as one of those screens is important. And this particular client, he literally calls one of our functions the Bing Bang Boom, because he's saying like, I wanted 3 clicks. Alert, did this, done. So he's like, Andres, I want the Big Bamboo implemented.
He's been watching Steve Jobs or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. Early on, we got the feedback that they don't even care what the units are.
Yeah.
It might be air quality, it might be noise. They don't care. Is it a problem? So we had to make our buttons bigger. We had to make our icons bigger, bright colors, and get rid of the units. I just want to know, what do I have a problem, and what do I do about it? And that's it. And so we've got these scientists in the background arguing whether it should be micrograms per cubic meter or ppm or whatever. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Yeah.
Have I got a problem? What do I do about it? And that's it.
Yeah, it's such an important, what you're talking about, just for any business development, is such an important thing. For I'll give you another example of ours. When we talk to, let's say, a marketing manager as opposed to a CEO about coming on the show, the CEO, we learned, and we had meetings about this trying to figure it out. We learned that with the CEO, you tell them what they should do, because they are used to getting information and making a decision. They don't need you to make them look good. They need you to tell them what's happening. So you go this, this, and this, and then they go yes or no. Whereas a marketing person has to go present it. So you need to give them all the tools and help them craft a new presentation, essentially, for them. And until we understood that, you do that with a CEO. It's like, why are you still talking? Like you're going on and on about this whole presentation, and like, I just need to know what does it cost? Where do I need to be? What time are we doing this? That's what I need. Marketing person, if you go, hey, it costs this much, and you need to, and their CEO needs to be here, and then this is this thing, they'll go, okay, well, he's not going to go for that. So it's just a complete. How long did it take to find that? It's such an important thing.
Yeah, it was early on. I think that's what, when we first started doing this, there were other organizations doing similar things, but our growth was much, much faster because within a year or two, it just clicked for the right people at the right time, and it influenced product design, I think, is the main thing. Like, you can get that feedback back and you can kind of absorb it, but when it got reflected back into the product, and then we could go back to those same customers, but also to other customers to say, now we understand in a way your problem, and this is how we've decided to solve it. That really clicked.
How often is that mistake made, though, that you don't make the button bigger? And
Exactly
you think
right.
you deal with every other problem but making that
you
button
think
bigger.
it's silly or something, and you say,
Yes,
no, we're not going to do it. I reckon that it's really important, and it's really telling when you go back to that. I mean, my background was air quality, so I think a lot about air quality management in that context. And you go back to those forums where all the experts are there, and those same consulting businesses still have the solution with their one or two customers that they're supporting. And it's because, I think that's the key reason. We just started to understand what an operational need actually was compared to an environmental need, and how to bring them together. And we're by no means there, but that mentality has been really important for us.
Just understanding the different silos and how the different way, like you said, they're all about the operation. Yeah, which is their job. That is what they're paid to be.
Yeah, it's not about managing environmental issues as much as removing the constraints of environment.
Very early on, I used to see these unbelievable reports. So it's like, oh, when an accident is about to occur, we have this report that shows the wind data, shows this, shows that, shows that. An operator is like, too much information. I don't know what to do with that. Yes, I could spend the next hour understanding your report to know what I need to do.
Yeah.
But then by then, there's another 20 things that I was supposed to be doing.
Right. I need to know if the water trucks need to be turned on.
Exactly.
That's what I need to know.
I mean, now we have visualizations where we can visualize a mine in a heat map that shows you where the highest emissions are coming from. Isolate it to the point. Is it the stockpiles? Is it the ship loader? Is it the haul roads? You can actually integrate all this complicated science to a simple color-coded map that shows, okay, that's my problem right now. Okay, get on the phone, solve it.
I feel like I'm in operations.
Exactly.
That's what I want.
Yeah, I think but I think that's the whole aspect. Now, what's interesting though behind all this, Jared, is that the environmental team then gets value from because let's say we're increasing water trucks, double the water trucks because of the dust. But you always got to ask your question of, is that even really having the impact that we have? Did we need it to act that way? So because now you're capturing that feedback loop into a system, your environmental team can start planning and understand what controls are really working effectively. Because you have to be able to have that feedback loop and be able to adapt and keep evolving. And one thing that I do an exercise with is, if I'm operating in a certain way, there's a cost to the mine to operate that way compared to another. So if I kind of start shifting how I'm operating, then that means that I can actually see a return on investment on my controls expenditure, basically. And we at Envirosuite talk about the concept of environmental capacity. And I think that's what environmental capacity translates into. Your physical capacity is how much you can actually extract, but your environmental capacity is based on weather conditions. How can I operate right now? How can I operate differently? And that can translate not only into an opportunity value, but also understanding of cost of controls and how do I optimize that, basically.
Right. I was actually going to ask you, are you making any recommendations based on the data, or do you leave that part? Like, are you saying, hey, you could be, watering down the roads this much more?
We do both.
You do both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's if a customer wants some advice on how to set those recommendations, we can provide it. It's kind of just part of the implementation that we do. But often they know. I mean, they know their operations best, and they often know what their options are. But we can tell them,
like a
which of those
refinement.
which of those options should you apply and when should you apply them? So it's
Yeah.
a big there's a big difference in saying, oh, we need to water, once a day, send a truck out once a day, compared to actually today you don't need to set a truck out at all, and tomorrow yes, but only between the hours of 12 and 2 because that'll have the biggest impact. So that's kind of the insights that the Envirosuite software can provide.
I mentioned earlier, and I want to kind of make it clear from an Envirosuite point of view, what we learned very quickly is that we needed to be a solution provider more than just a software company. So what that actually means is that by no means you buy the software and then your of you go on your own. This is a consultative approach that we're constantly working with our clients. So they tell us this is what we're applying. We may put it into the system. After a month or two operations, we can say, well, these controls work really well. These ones have not actually worked as well. They may go back and decide what other options they have and alternatives. So I think it's an ongoing consultative approach.
Yeah.
And when we work with mining operations, we're in constant communications with them. We have technical customer success groups that are dedicated to work with the mine operation on that. So the most successful cases I have is because people have taken us as a tool that they can see a strategy of constant improvement in place. And I think that's what it is. We have to be part of that constant improvement methodology.
I was also going to ask, there's actually a couple things I wanted to ask. One is, I'm trying to decide which one I want to go first. Actually, let's stick with this one just quickly. Could it get to a point for the future of digitalization where, I wish I had more information about it. For instance, I think it's in Israel, they developed some insane watering system for that's like timed. I think it's by the weather, and I'm just gonna butcher it, so I'm not gonna go into it. But it's this insane system that basically uses the least amount of water that maximizes the absolute, and it's for agriculture. They just get insane results from it. Could you get to a point in mining where that's, let's say, an automated water truck, or it's mixed with chemicals or whatever it is, it's linked to your system, it's automated, or maybe it's some sort of irrigation system. It's all just working together. I've even seen things like for scheduling, like shift work. It's automating, like the AI system is then adapting the shifts based on the environment and the weather, and it's all syncing together. I mean, I know this is not happening tomorrow.
That's all. The future is here, in
Yeah.
that sense. We can definitely do things like that. Some examples are that we've applied in the past. Watering of stockpiles proactively. So we know when there's high risk conditions, you can get. It's better to be able to water before the conditions appear because you need time to actually get the moisture content up. So and having watering systems that are connected literally to the alerts that are generated by our system. So we're able to not just take in information and provide a recommendation. You can actually send signals out to devices to switch things on and off where you need. So that's all possible now. I have to say, honestly, most people don't go that far because they still want a human in the loop in some sense.
Yeah.
It's probably more of a mentality thing around how much do I trust the machines to do everything.
But possible.
It's all there, and it is applied in some cases in that way. And I mean, we send signals out to lots of different other systems for different purposes. And that was part of that being flexible as well. We need to be able to take information out from lots of different sources, take information in from lots of different sources, but also
send it out. It's an important clarification.
Well, what you're referring to, which is what I see as a lot going, is the whole industrial revolution 4.0 really that was happening.
That's exactly what I'm referring to.
4.0 is where everybody's kind of talking about it. We were at a conference in Colombia, we were presenting, it was solely driven off mining 4.0. And it's that whole element of we had technologies that helps us drive processes, but can it help us now drive automation? And can we actually head towards the so I think it's the technology and the avenue is there. And I think with some of the most advanced AI systems that we're seeing now moving forward, what that's going to do is start to develop more and more trust on it. And I think with the more we start trusting the system, we probably could get to a point where There's a lot of automation design about it. I'm seeing some amazing operations where not just remote, but autonomous vehicles happening, electrification of vehicles happening. So the ability to actually be able to influence those automations through weather conditions and stay in compliance.
Yeah.
I think that's that's as Chaim said, the future is now. I think the opportunity.
We're very early. We've just had a few examples of it, but we're very early in that.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Like I think of, I know this is another example, but like when I was in the construction space, you would go out to sites and then the weather's not matching up and you could, oh, but this other project, we could have done this in this type of weather, or the weather's fine over there. We could have been over there and then we could have gone over here tomorrow. But all that stuff is still manual.
Mm-hmm.
When you start automating all of that and shift changing that, which I know you have that capability of, like the people using your technology to shift change. I mean, you're talking, millions of dollars over a year. If you're changing it by 5% over a year, you adjust your scheduling. That's huge, huge.
Oh, and they're bigger. I mean, they're bigger implications for environmental risks. As now we're at
Well, yeah.
now we're at a point where mining operations can be constricted or shut down in the wrong if the conditions are unfavorable, and if they're going to exceed at a regulatory monitor, they may be restricted, and then the costs are just enormous.
Right, and then you might know, okay, we got to scale up now because next week we're going to have these issues coming in, right? Things like that.
Yeah.
The other question I wanted to ask was about in the Greenfield part of it, when a mine is trying to get going. And in the town I'm from, around that area, Kamloops, there was a mine. What I heard was a big part of it was like things like dust. I think noise. I think dust was the main driver. Noise might have been a factor as well, but it was part of the justification. It also could have been gold prices and stuff like that, but it was part of the justification for the mine not getting going in that area. And it was a frustrating thing if you're supporting mines and wanting the job. Of course, I grew up with a lot of friends that work in mines and that, so it was a big thing for the community. And there was a lot of misunderstanding about what it would look like. I think people had this idea of these big dust clouds coming into the city, which, if that was the case, of course you wouldn't want that. But they actually had a great plan for it. Are you finding a demand for your services in the planning stages?
I'd say it's,
or even the visualization of what it could look like.
Yeah, I mean, just last week actually, I was speaking to a customer who wants to apply Envirosuite in a virtual mode, so build a virtual facility prior to it being built to demonstrate to the regulator and the community how it would operate and how it would manage its air quality impacts. So it's just started to see that sort of. We've focused very much on
operational
brownfield developments in the past, but yeah, just starting to see it, and I think it's because, again, environmental justice and regulatory drivers are really they're always becoming more stringent. My whole career, environmental regulation has only ever become more stringent.
Yeah,
and so things that were permissible in the past are not anymore. So mining companies, or many other industries, are looking for ways to show during the planning phase that they're going to manage at a very high level. So being able to demonstrate a technology in that phase could be helpful.
Yeah, it seems like that there could be a big demand for that. Because even like here in Canada, I mean, our government, like provincial governments, federal governments, they're showing up to mining events a lot more than they used to. I mean, everybody understands mining it's just getting going. Like if they doubled the amount of cars, I think in BC where we're here now, it's 3% or something are electric cars. If they doubled that, if they went to 6%, the amount of mining that would have to happen to make that happen is I don't think people even have a concept of actually how big of a scale that would be. So I would imagine you're going to be getting those calls.
Yeah.
Try to get social license to operate in
Yeah.
places.
Yeah. People are looking for different ways of getting through that process. And yeah. we can definitely fit there.
What do you think? Just what, and both you can answer this. What should be the expectation if somebody is reaching out? They see this interview. We'll start with you, and then over to you, Andres. Is what do you what should be the expectation that the day one conversation and then the 3 month conversation when you're onboarding and all that sort of process? What do you how do you think people should manage their expectations when they start that conversation?
You mean before they engage with Envirosuite?
When they start to engage,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, look, we're really the Envirosuite solution is quite broad. It's the product that we primarily are involved with, Andres and I, is called Omnis, and it's Latin for everything. So it can do lots of different. Can do lots of not broad. Broad's the wrong word. It's very flexible, and it can do lots of different things. So early on, most of our work is really trying to understand where specifically can we help the most. What is the primary challenge from an environmental management point of view, and how can our technology help to solve that problem? Because it can do lots of different things in lots of different ways, whether you have lots of sensors or no sensors, whether you inherently trust or distrust modeling as a solution. Those sort of questions are really important, and also where the organization is at. Who is driving this from the customer side? Where is it coming from? Is it coming from the regulator? Is it coming from a desire for continuous improvement, environmental management? Is it coming from some particular operational need? All of those things are really important through the early stage to make sure that we get a good fit with a particular customer, and then we go from there. As Andres said, we still retain a lot of specialist expertise in the subject matter, and that phase is very much around fitting the technology to the particular problem, and I guess that's Andres will have a different perspective here, but that's where I'm really focused in terms of making our technology fit as closely as possible.
So just to clarify, if someone doesn't have every sensor that they maybe think they should, that's not sort of a reason to not have the conversation.
Yeah, exactly right. We can operate a solution with no sensors. There's things you can do with global data sets. There's things you can do with just a weather station. There's things you can do with one or two air quality or noise sensors, and then there's a whole bunch of different things you can do if you have more.
Right.
And then there's if you have just a regulatory sensor as opposed to low cost, broad network of low cost sensors. There's lots of different things you can do, lots of different solutions to a problem. So those problems we talked about is finding the root cause of your issue quickly, responding quickly, understanding which action you should take. They can all be done in different ways, depending on what you have in place and what you're willing to put into place. So that's really the focus of the initial engagement for us. And then after that, after it's in, it's really much around optimizing it to get the most value from it for a particular organization. It could be around where should you locate your network? What should your triggers be? What should your actions be?
Right.
What should your investigation look like? How much of your investigation happens within the Envirosuite platform? How much of it happens through your corporate processes? And that all of those questions we need to understand the answers to have a good outcome.
Andres?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me on those very early conversations is what are you really trying to achieve, and define a specific problem you're trying to understand, to address. Give you an example, like if they want to be in compliance and I want to stay in compliance and I make sure we'll stay in compliance, that's great. So what controls and triggers you have at the moment at your disposal? So if I was to tell you, hey, you're going to be out of compliance tomorrow, but you're going to tell me, well, there's nothing I can do about it, then that defeats a little bit of that understanding. So I like to work with those initial conversations a lot more about discovering what is it that we could actually do if we had a system that operations could act on very quickly. Like if you could actually change something tomorrow so that you're going to stay in compliance, what would you do? Forget about Envirosuite for a minute, but what would you do tomorrow if you knew certain conditions from weather were going to be actually impacting your compliance monitor? And And I think that's important for me because once people come with the idea, well, if I knew this information, I could actually do X,
Mm.
then I think we have a very good solution to be fitted to it. We typically engage on that discovery process, and it's a consultative approach. So we come back and forth on what are the options, and then once we find that we have something, what we like to do is bring what we decide to say the design solution to what it is. And that may be a phase one solution. Maybe there is a phase approach. Maybe we're going to start on one section of the mine and we're going to expand later. Maybe we start air quality. We want to do noise and vibration later. So we'll define that at a point. But then we actually say, okay, look, this is what your solution should look like. And from there on, it just becomes a matter of how do we actually go about implementing that.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being on the show. We covered quite a bit of ground. I know, and you just got off a plane last night, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I'm sure Andres will tell me what day it is when we leave the
You
studio.
probably won't even remember this interview.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming in. I hope we do it again. I know your team's going to be at CIM. At very least, we'll see you there. But maybe we get another episode in and just unpack things more. I know there's lots else we could talk about, but I hope I did a fair introduction to the company.
No, thank you for having us, and I'll encourage everybody to connect with us, LinkedIn, website, check us out, and then more than happy to always have conversations. As you say, we're gonna be at CIM, so I'm looking forward to having a lot of conversations around that. And then for me, it's all about helping the industry move forward to this 4.0 system.
Yeah. Are you heading over to Mine Expo too?
Yes, we will be.
Yeah.
At Mine Expo.
Okay.
So
Well, we'll
that's in
see.
Vegas.
Yeah,
So
we'll see you
Vegas,
there
yeah,
as well
we'll be
then.
in Mine Expo.
Okay.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
very much.
And thank you everybody for watching. Like Andres was saying, we're going to have their both his and Chaim's LinkedIn in the description below. We'll have their. Do you have a YouTube channel? I don't see a link here, but
There is no one up to date right now.
okay. If there's but we do have their LinkedIn, their website. You can go follow the company, connect with both guests on the show. Thank you everybody for watching. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.